musician. So I hope you'll stay on the line, and I think we're going to drop a spot right now, and then we'll bring Jon in.
Bass players, best thing you can do for your overall sound. You've got to see this. New Basstone Incorporated makes Nightwalker bass guitar tube preamps. This preamp will give your sound such a boost, it's just incredible. Try it today. Try it today now. A great sounding bass guitar will make for a great sounding band. Make your band sound at its best. Best thing you can do for your bass guitar sound. NewBassTone.com. NewBassTone.com.
All right, welcome, Mr. Shain, to Straight Talk with Dean and Mark. You are now on the line.
All right, hello. How are you?
Hey, Jon, glad to have you on the line and everything. As you could hear earlier, we were talking to the young lady that's dealing with adoption and things of that nature. So, but we love to have a conversation about all kinds of things, including entertainment and cultural world and activism, as well as entrepreneurs. And I know that you're definitely, I would consider both a great creative, being a musician, as well as an entrepreneur. And actually, I know for a fact that we've had a couple of the blues artists that you are familiar with. I can't remember whether it was the McFarlanes or some of the others that have been involved in the whole concept of having adopted kids and everything. So that's kind of like the cross mixture and everything. But I do know that we've had some of our historical blues artists from Durham that have adopted their kids in the area, but I've always known you as being a great musician. So just wanted to have our listeners talk to you and hear a little bit about what you've got going on musical-wise, because you're just an amazing musician. I consider you one of our top musicians here in the area, keeping the tradition of the Piedmont Sound alive, but also just keeping the great blues traditions alive that aren't just the Piedmont sound, but a variety of sounds, because you can also play the Mississippi style and some other styles as well.
Well, thank you. Actually, it was interesting. Last night I did not last night, it was Saturday night. I just played a show at the Cat's Cradle. They're doing their 50th anniversary bunch of shows, and they asked me to do a reunion show with Mark Simonson, who was in Flying Mice with me back in the 90s, and he actually has an adoptive son. So there you go.
Wow. So there is those connections.
Yeah. There is. He's a beautiful little kid. Yeah.
Wow. So you said that you did that reunion, and Cat's Cradle has been such a part of the institutions around here, and it's hard to believe it's been around for 50 years, that Frank has had that club for 50 years, and I think it's probably
Frank hasn't had it for 50 years. He's probably only about 58 years old himself.
Right. Well, that's true. That's right.
It's had a bunch of owners, but he's had it since the late 80s, I believe. So.
Wow. So he's had it for a number of years, but my point is that I'm not going to be surprised if it doesn't go for another 50 years or so. So, Jon, as long as I've known you, I've never asked you what got you into blues music. Like I said, I know that you're definitely very much into it, a student of it, not just a musician yourself, but also a student of the art form. So what got you into being such a student of blues music, as well as just roots music in general? Because I can't just stick you. I mean, I love blues. I know you love blues. I can't stick you only in the blues category, because you do a lot of music that some people would call it folk. Some people would call it country.
Yeah, I do all sorts of stuff, but the blues is always kind of at the center of it. When I started off, listening to music and playing guitar, I lived in Massachusetts my first 18 years, and I didn't know folk music from anything at that time. All we grew up listening to was rock and roll. My dad was kind of the first generation to have rock and roll, so his bands that he listened to were, Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly, and he loved the Stax Volt stuff like Otis Redding, and he loved the Motown stuff. So that's what I grew up listening to, was like what they called the golden oldies before they had the genre classic rock. It was the golden oldies. And they did not have country music on the radio where I grew up. That was kind of considered Southern stuff, I think. And so it was really just this rock and doo-wop stuff. And then, of course, later on, I started listening to everything that came around. But in high school, I had a wonderful musical influence, or teacher named Chris Stellans. He turned us on to jazz. He turned us on to blues. He turned us on to fusion. Listened to electronic music. We listened to all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, the radio, was already playing everything from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Run DMC at that point. So I had a really good, well-rounded musical education. But
Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, as far as I had always heard blues in the electric form, like B.B. King and things like that, but my first introduction to it in an acoustic form was I was given a record by a good friend of mine in high school, and it was Jorma Kaukonen's first solo album called Qua. And for your listeners who may not know, Jorma Kaukonen was the lead guitar player for Jefferson Airplane, but he also had a band that he still plays with called Hot Tuna, and they are primarily an acoustic-based blues group. And when I heard him pick the guitar with the alternating thumb sound, it just changed my whole view. And that was when I kind of put the electric guitar behind the acoustic guitar, and went out, bought an Ovation acoustic that had the pickup, and I was like, I want to learn how to do that. And so the next year I moved down to North Carolina, went to school at Duke, and found out that there were actually musicians who were still alive playing acoustic and electric guitars, but they were playing that Piedmont style of guitar right here. So had a great opportunity to get to hear up close and personal people like Big Boy Henry and John D. Holman, and of course, like the people who were in the generation between us, like Lightnin' Wells, he was a huge influence as well.
Yeah, and I know you were influenced by, like you said, John D. Holman, and I'm imagining both Sonny Terry and his compatriots and things of that nature. But one of the things that I know we've talked about on this show, as well as just in conversations I've had with friends of mine, actually Bradley Simmons was on, who's an African drummer, at the last show we did, which was not the last Monday, but the Monday before, and he was talking about how he's frustrated sometimes that our academic institutions don't teach enough about African drumming, and when he's approached him about teaching African drumming, he's met with deaf ears. I'm wondering if you feel the same way about the blues, because I know that sometimes of course, the jazz and the classical is definitely accentuated a lot. I don't know that we get the blues accentuated enough, and I know that, in my opinion, definitely the radio does not accentuate it enough.
I mean, I can only speak for my short 3.5 years at Duke in the late 80s. And at that time, we had the jazz saxophone player, Paul Jeffrey, and he was. I got to take classes with him. He was, he played in Monk's band, so that was incredible. That I was able to learn improvisation straight from him. And Duke had, the college radio station, and they had Slewfoot playing blues every Saturday. So that was also a great program. So I'm not sure that they ever taught anything about blues in the classroom, but the music was around us. You just had to go looking for it. Interestingly, I did for a little while want to combine my academic interests with the musical interests, and I was a history major, and my junior year I took a class with what was this professor's name? I can see his face in my mind, but he was it was an African American history class, and I did my term paper on blues in Durham from the 1930s and 40s. And I did some interviews for that, and I've actually donated those tapes to the North Carolina collection, the folk collection that they have over there in the library. But Glenn Henson, who you may know as a folklorist, he put me in touch with some people. And I thought I might do more work with that kind of thing And so I tried to do a senior term, what do they call those, not much of an academic anymore, but it was going to be a independent study, you know, and it was going to be involved with a film that they were making at UNC on blues in the Triangle in the 1920s and 30s. And I could not get a single professor to take me on as my advisor. In fact, one of them said to me, "John, you should just play the blues instead of studying it." And
wow.
I was like, yeah, I just kind of, at that point, I got pretty frustrated, and I decided I would finish my coursework as quickly as possible. So I went to summer school, and I just took the classes that I could to graduate. I got done, and then I just went into the music world.
And you've been in the music world now for a number of years. What do you consider one of your most favorite concerts that you've done? Because you've done so many. You played around with some of the greats from definitely in our local scene, but also nationally and internationally. So if somebody had to ask you your two or three favorite concerts that you were able to perform with, like a famous artist or somebody, or a concert that you just enjoyed. It might be a concert that you did on your own.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to pick any one or two because there have been so many concerts that were memorable to me. The one that sticks out in my mind is it was a very small private affair, but when Jackson Browne was given an award at Duke, they asked me to play music at his award dinner for him and like 40 guests, and then Jackson came up and joined us on stage.
Oh wow,
that was pretty cool. Getting to play with Jackson Browne was cool. We also did a show where I sat in with Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. That was at the Carolina Theater. You know, and over the years, I've just been blessed. You know, I've been able to play with a lot of my heroes. I've gotten to jam on stage with Jorma Kaukonen. I've had John Hammond in my house playing guitar with me. So I mean, it's hard to pick just one of these great artists. You know.
Yeah, you've been fortunate to perform with a lot of great artists, and of course, for a long time, you were part of the North Carolina music community and the music scene here in North Carolina. And recently, there's been conversation among some of our North Carolina artists about the feel that they're not getting paid enough and not being supported enough. And I was just wondering if you've been following that conversation at all, and is that something that you think that we need to have more of? Because I know Monica Burns, who is an author here in the area, has been going in front of the city council basically trying to create like a grant that would help support our artists that are out there. Like I said, she's a national author, and then she's had all kinds of people. She's had playwrights, she's had musicians, she's had different people come up in part of this conversation that they're having at the city, with the city council and the cultural advisory board, because they felt that whether it's Centerfest or whether it's some of our other festivals, they're not necessarily paying the artists enough, and they would also like to find ways that the artists can actually make a living wage and be able to thrive.
So, you know, my take on that, and I'm going to sound like some kind of socialist here, but my take on it is that it is an echo of our larger society at large, because what we see across all industries in the United States is a growing separation of the incredibly wealthy and the people who are considered expendable. You know, and the minimum wage hasn't moved in 15 years or something. Well,
something like that.
If you're a local musician, never mind here, I mean, it might be in New York City, you're still getting like $75 to $100 a man a night, and we were making that in 1990. You know. Now, I shouldn't say we, because I've been lucky. I've kind of priced myself out of it, finally, you know, getting to where I play ticketed shows. But my point is that the musicians who play at DPAC, people are willing to pay $250 or $300 for a ticket to see these shows. And so people, it's like on the top end of things, they're making more money than they ever made.